Ayahuasca is a powerful hallucinogenic drug used by celebrities such as Prince Harry and Bruce Parry. Who's Bruce Parry?
I don't know.
I thought he was a minister or something. Bruce Parry. Anyway, the famous Bruce Parry, whoever he is, has been getting attention recently. Now, there's a chap called Ben Goldsmith, and tell us about him.
Yes, so his father was the famous financier, Sir James Goldsmith, and obviously his brother, Zach Goldsmith, he tried to become Mayor of London, didn't he? He was in the cabinet with Boris, and one of the richest MPs, I think, at the time.
It's a sad story,
But
this.
tragically, Ben Goldsmith lost his daughter, Iris. She was driving one of those 4x4s that you can get in a country estate, and it flipped, and she was trapped underneath it for around an hour before anyone could get to her. By the time Ben got to her, she was dead. And he was hugely traumatised by her sudden death, and has been on this kind of spiritual journey. And he wrote in the Sunday Times this weekend all about ayahuasca, which to a lot of people is controversial, perhaps frowned upon, and yet he kind of gave it a different sheen. And I'm just interested to get the thoughts on all of this from Henry Whitfield.
It is illegal in this country.
It's illegal
right.
in this country, and there's no suggestion he did anything illegal, by the way. I think he was abroad when he took it, where it was legal, just to clarify.
Here's Henry Whitfield. Good morning, Henry. Henry is a psychedelic researcher to tell us more about ayahuasca. Right, where do we begin? What is it? What can it do?
It's a plant medicine that consists of two plants, and when you take it, it helps you to. There's many ways of explaining what it does, but one simple way is it helps you to feel what's difficult to feel. So when it comes to things like psychotherapeutic processes, it's really fundamental whether you can feel what was difficult to feel. It also helps you come out of patterns. We all have habitual patterns of how we think, but sometimes they help us, but sometimes they can be a barrier as well. So it helps you come out of those.
You do hear about people having traumatic experiences sometimes. I know a lot of Westerners go on this kind of shamanistic experience tourist path. They go to Bolivia, Peru, wherever it might be, looking for some kind of spiritual awakening, and end up vomiting and crying for 2 or 3 days. It can go wrong. Am I right?
Yeah, it's definitely not for everybody. You need to be looked after by people who really understand what they're doing. If the dosage was too high and you weren't really looked after, then yeah, it could just be a really stressful, even traumatic experience. But if you're really psychologically very unstable, for example, if you're highly suicidal and you've made a few suicide attempts already, if then you take something that makes you feel more, then yeah, that could be really difficult. Of course, it's going to bring up what's there. But for the majority of people, there have been many studies that have been done into psychedelics, and ayahuasca, and it is, when people are supervised, it's very rare that there is an abject effect.
Henry, what is the future for it? Is it likely to be legalized? What are your own experiences of it, and how do you think it could be used beneficially?
Well, one example is there's already a charity in this country, heroicheartsuk.com, and they raise money so that survivors of trauma from military war veterans who've come home from seeing action abroad, and they're really traumatized. They've seen some of the most horrendous things human beings actually get to see, and they try many other therapies that don't really deliver. They then, with this charity, this is something that's already happening. They raise money so that they can send you to countries where it already is legal, like the one that you were just mentioning, Ben Goldsmith. I believe he went to Ecuador. In Ecuador, it's legal. But yeah, also I did hear recently that I think it might even be debated in Parliament this month about whether to reschedule psilocybin, which is, it's not different. It's not ayahuasca, but it has some similar effects as something that could be used for research to really help people that weren't able to get the help that they needed through traditional therapy means.
It really is a growth area, isn't it? The use of psychedelics in treating PTSD, particularly, as you say, for servicemen and women, things like that. I'm interested. Prince Harry described it as changing him, and that it cleaned the windscreen of his troubled mind. Perhaps not enough, a lot of people would suggest. Well, listen, really fascinating talking to you. Henry, have you ever actually taken it yourself?
Yes, I have. I've been to Brazil where it's legal, and up until relatively recently it was legal in the Netherlands as well. Also in Italy it was legal until quite recently. And yeah, what I could tell you a little bit about what it did for me. I think that's very common that can come up because most people have, we all have our limits, don't we? In certain situations, we can feel pressured, we can feel less able to be ourselves. That tends to bring you back to your self-worth. And so when I first tried it, I was going through a breakup, and it enabled me to see how I was in my relationships, and I think ultimately be a better partner. Also, another thing
Henry,
that
that's
really helped me.
Well, we have to wrap, I'm afraid. Listen, fascinating to hear your experience as a researcher into psychedelics and having experienced it yourself. Could you be persuaded?
Sitting working with you, yes. Yeah, if I need a dose of ayahuasca. Ayahuasca.
It's not ayahuasca.
What is it? Ayahuasca.
Like Ayanapa. Ayahuasca.
I'll take your word for it. Back after this.